Greetings once again, YouTube. Laurie Cousins here, and today is going to be a response video to Underwood WWAD. The subject of today's video is the battle map. Now, a lot of people dislike the battle map because it takes time to get out, set up, put miniatures down, and breaks immersion for them. Me, personally, I am a tabletop wargamer first and foremost, so having a battle map or any type of map at the table isn't breaking the immersion. You don't need to think in that way. Immersion cannot be broken just by that one small issue. Immersion is broken when someone starts breaking the rules and it makes no sense and you're having to spend time like, oh wait a minute, what the hell? Did you really just do that? That makes no sense. I'm not immersed in the world because I don't understand what's going on. It doesn't look right. It doesn't sound right. Now that's breaking immersion. The battle map's just a mechanic. And as all mechanics, it has its own set of rules and regulations and how to use it. You don't need to worry about it breaking the immersion of the feel of the table. I mean, in a game like Dark Heresy, where the main situation is all guns, and range increments becoming the main issue, you're going to need a battle map, or squares, or just a tape measure, between two models to determine if they're in range, out of range, how far out of range. And even with spells in D&D 3rd edition, 33.5, Pathfinder, D&D 4.0, even back in AD&D, or any other RPG system, where magic or guns are utilized, whether it's a lot or just a small amount. The battle map can add an extra layer to the immersion, an extra feel to the game. For example, let's say there's a low wall here. People might want to hide behind it. They're like, you didn't describe there was a wall, but you've got a wall down the table, I'm going to use it. If you don't describe completely what the thing looks like, people are going to feel like, hey, wait a minute, that's not what you described, but here's what I'm seeing. I'm going to use what I see. The player may see it's there, the character's most likely going to see it's there, because they're on the same section. Especially since most of these RPG games can easily just be taken and played as a skirmish miniatures game, if you think about it in the long term. Now a lot of you be like, oh, I don't like skirmish miniature games, but I've come from a session where miniature wargaming and skirmish games are pretty much the norm. My group have been Warhammer Fantasy, and mostly 40k as well, fans with GW for quite a while. I mean, with me, I played Warhammer Quest, Hero Quest, Space Hulk, Space Crusade. All these use a board or tiles with squares on them. You couldn't actually play Warhammer Quest as an RPG with your character leveling up, with random dice rolls along the roads and towns to see what you might find or what happens to you. Random encounters, if you will. On top of all that, I could easily just take Warhammer Quest, use the missions in that book, but use Warhammer 2nd or 3rd edition rules and say, okay, we're doing this as a dungeon crawl. Pretty much, and then I might as well just play D&D anyway, because that's pretty much what all D&D players do. They make dungeon crawls. Now, I'm sorry to you guys out there who don't do dungeon crawls, because I see it's pointless, because dungeon crawling means you can't bring in the, you know, the cavalier with his horse, or the paladin who's got a horse-bound mount as his bonded item instead, because then they start losing out on all their special feats for horse combat, but that's beside the point. Actually, that's not beside the point. That's actually useful for open top terrain. If you're on a horse can go a lot further than a character. It's got a higher charge range and rate. Movement rate and charge range. That's what I mean. A human in Dark Heresy can move up to 18 as a charge range. However, if that was a horse, they'd probably be doing something like 30 meters charge. Now you tell me that if you don't have a battle map for that, and you're just working this all out in your head as a GM, how confusing is that all going to get, knowing where everyone's standing? And how far away they are from each opponent, or who's in what combat? Sure, I've been able to do it with 4 people, but if there's people out there doing it with 6, and you can do it without a map, well, kudos to you, because I wouldn't be able to do that without knowing where everyone is, via a map. That map is what gives me that extra sense of immersion, that extra sense of danger for the players. Like, okay, there's a guy over there, he's coming at me with a big ass sword. And I've already got to deal with 2 of these guys at once already. Now that leaves you in a position where it's like, as GM, without the battle map, you're having to rely on the players being truthful in their honesty where they're standing. I mean, you've led yourself with the door. Yes, you can just basically say, okay, you're all by the door, the first set of squares, that's by the door. But some players might say, oh, but I ran into the room. I barged to the door and ran in. So I'm now actually standing in the middle of the room where they're in trouble, away from the rest of the group. A player doing that without a battle map, knowing how big the room is, I mean, you could say the room is a 6 by 6 squares, which is 6 by 6 meters, maybe, in terminology of what the actual size of the room is. And if you're using meters as the main focus, then you're going to need to know how far away everyone is. A battle map will allow you, for guns in Dark Heresy, where we've got a lot of guns, with ranges bordering on 150 or higher, and extreme range can then go up to 300 meters. Extreme long range is 300 meters for a gun that has 150, and that's a minus 30 to hit, but still, the fact that a gun can hit 300 meters, that is basically 300 centimeters if you're going to be using a centimeter-based ruler, or a tape measure. Battle maps, I find, are useful because it helps to determine rules. It helps accent the rules which lead to better story. And better story, coming from the rules, generates for an overall better game. As always, this is Laurie Collins. Ta-ta, people!